a variety of different ways.
So agency to agency in risk management or risk assessment, it will be up to that agency and OTI to figure that out.
It's a little too early to know exactly what the process, right, the step-by-step, again, is, because we're still in some of those earlier stages, like I described, we're better understanding that risk landscape, et cetera.
Do you think that the results of these assessments will be made public in the progress reports, or just public by the agency or OTI?
Again, I think it's too early to know exactly what will be in that.
But transparency is one of your principles, so.
Transparency absolutely is wherever we can. Wherever we can, we like to make sure that information is available so that New Yorkers better understand the role that these technologies play. I am not I don't have the insight into exactly what we're asking in those questions right now to know exactly what would be available.
And so just for you in your unit or department, do you think that is a direction the city, not just OTI, should move in, where if these guidelines are to understand how to do risk assessment for your own agency, it can be with OTI or without OTI, it's too early to tell, but that New Yorkers should have access to this information.
Yeah, I think that's why we're so supportive of Local Law 35, which gives New Yorkers insight into the tools that are currently being used. I think
I read it. It's not, yes, it does do that, but it's not like, I don't think it's explicit in like risk assessment. It's not explicit yet on, not all agencies respond equally, so there's, I think, a different level of detail agency tool to agency tool. So that's why I think I'm just asking if you think it should live separate and apart.
Sure. So just
local law plays an important role, yes.
Yeah. Just to respond to that bit, certainly one of the things back to OTI's role in something like Local Law 35 is, in fact, to make sure that over time agency responses to Local Law 35 are all sort of meeting the standard that we think needs to have. So we are working with agencies actively.
Do you have like a timeline for that?
We've been doing it. So we already do work with agencies to make sure that their responses are meeting the need of Local Law 35.
Okay.
But back to the question on risk assessments, we, again, want to make sure that what we're putting on paper is responsive to the particular moment in time. Some agencies come and talk to OTI for advisory work early in a process, and it doesn't mean that something is actually going to fully pan out. And so we don't want to be jumping the gun and suggesting that there's written assessments that are publishable at this time.
Thank you. I think just on, and I have some questions about Local Law 35, and just correct me if I'm wrong, was the most recent reporting the one in 2023?
Yes, 2024 is underway now.
Okay. I don't know. I don't think every agency response has like a standard. I mean, some, like DOI, I think it's DOI or maybe PD, one of them, the vendor is no answer. Is NA. I don't even know what that means, right? As opposed to some of the other agencies that have, some of the other agencies also will tell you in the document that you published until when their contract is good until, and some it's just a sentence. So I don't know if it's like a standard. I don't know. That's why I'm asking if there's more of a role OTI is going to play to ensure that it is the same information for every single agency that's being published.
Well, we are working on that and certainly do work with agencies. There are obviously from agency to agency particular instances where they may have a contract or some other obligation that may prevent them from answering in a specific way or in the same way that another agency does. So that some of that could be the result of agency to agency distinctions or differences. But in general, we do work with agencies to make sure that what Local Law 35 requires is being reported.
Okay, thank you. For initiative number 2, building external relationships, in progress?
A number of things that we've been able to do, but obviously continuing to do more.
Okay, but so like not done?
Yes, correct. Yeah. There's still some things that we still want to do there.
What? How do you all define external relationship?
So we wanted to, when we were drafting the action plan, we really wanted to not miss the opportunity to tap into the academic institutions that New York has, the civic society organizations that the city has, our own tech industry. We wanted to be very clear that there's external views that really could sort of help us come up with better strategy, policy, et cetera. So really, anywhere we can find opportunities to partner with an academic institution.
You've got Vicky Palladino.
Yeah, exactly.
Explicitly wants to be involved.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of thing is very much what we want to be able to do so that we can tap into expertise outside of our own walls.
And are you all thinking about the external relationship development as like you are kind of touching on this as often as you're looking to release your progress reports? Is this like
ongoing? For sure, yeah. Both the external engagement and the public engagement are intended to have sort of these ongoing activities. So our advisory network, which exists to structure some of that support, is not a one and done. We engage them periodically to be able to inform on a number of different reasons.
And I guess I know you said it's ongoing. And is there a particular phase that we are in now for building external relationships? Is there anything that you can highlight kind of that you're working on right now in this piece?
Sure. So our biggest achievement for the past year was standing up the advisory network. So that collection of individuals, they represent a diverse set of sectors and industries, and they're intended to be able to help us tap into individual expertise when we need it. We perceive more of the kind of like partnership opportunities to be really ongoing, right? So we're not going to sort of say, oh, we did one partnership, we're done. Mm-hmm. We want to think about where over time it continues to make sense to think about partnerships.
And what was the process for selecting those members as part of the
advisory network? Yeah. We had some nominations that came to us, and then in other cases we knew where some valuable resources could be.
And I guess what is the agenda, or how often is the network meeting?
Sure, we convened the larger group for the first time this past summer, and we have intentions to regroup with them before the end of this year. And then in some cases, it's more of a individual level engagement, right? A particular member who may have particular expertise, we want to engage with that person, so it's not always a standing function.
And then for the future, for just ongoing, are nominations the best way for someone that wants to get involved or participate in the network?
We're always happy to receive those. We don't have a formal cap on the number of advisors, and so if there's a really valuable person with valuable expertise from an organization that it makes sense to account for, we'd be happy to do that. When we talk more organizationally, that's where we sort of think about it more as a partnership versus advisory network membership, but we're always happy to receive nominations or recommendations for groups or individuals who we should be engaging with.
And how do you all receive those nominations?
The best way is through a web form on OTI's website. You can select artificial intelligence as your topic, and it's a dedicated inbox for all of this work.
Excellent. And then, because the steering committee meets a little bit more regularly,
correct?
Right, more structured. Have they met with the advisory network, or are there plans for them to?
There are opportunities that we envision where those expertise could be sort of mixed together. We haven't done that formally yet.
Okay. Can you share how many people are in the advisory network?
The advisory network is up to, I want to say it's about a little over a dozen at this point.
And is there any concern or any issue with like private agency information with respect to the advisory network? Since I know these are folks that are nominated, I'm assuming there's some kind of level of vetting to make sure.
Correct, yes.
But is there any concern, any privacy concerns, or any issue with agency information crossing over?
So to be clear, neither the advisory network nor the internal steering committee deals directly with specific agency tools. There are no data sharing activities as part of either of those groups.
Thank you. And then can you just confirm the steering committee meets, how many, you already said it, right?
Quarterly.
Quarterly, okay. Okay. So agencies have not worked directly have not shared any like direct agency information,
With the advisory network members?
or just within the steering committee.
Well, certainly agencies could volunteer information about, their AI priorities. That's what we want them to do, to talk about where they, see their vision, et cetera. But again, one of the activities of the steering committee is not to review individual tools or to share data derived from or utilized within a specific
Okay.
tool.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can I ask about the public engagement? I know you touched on it a little bit. So there was a number of public engagement sessions, and then OTI took over that responsibility, correct?
So we did our own in the summer of 2024,
Okay.
derived from the action plan. So the action plan committed us to building out a number of public listening sessions so that we could, again, better understand the priorities and interest summary of what we learned from those sessions, and then are expecting to do more sessions in the coming year.
How many were done virtually in the summer?
It was all three of the ones.
All three, and those were now OTI facilitated.
Those were all OTI facilitated.
Okay, and all virtual.
Correct.
Okay, and was there any issue with language?
No. If I recall, we had for the sign up on our site an option to identify any language or access needs, and I don't recall us needing to pull in any special.
And they were just during the summer, July and August?
I'll double check on the specific dates of them and get them back to you. But yes, it was summer of 2024.
Okay, and what can you share how many people attended in total?
I'll send those numbers. We can send.
Okay, and then can you share kind of like what the outreach was for these sessions?
Sure. Most of the outreach we did through social media, so working with existing social media channels that OTI has, also working with city agency partners and their social media channels. One of our key findings, I think, from our sessions is that we'd love to think about how we can do different sorts of outreach to continue to engage further with New Yorkers and to make sure we're, per Councilmember Palladino's point, speaking to specific groups.
And I'm sorry, it was social media agency to agency or like network partners? How?
No, so us as OTI putting out information on our social media, and then likewise working with agency partners for them to do the same.
And agency partners. Okay. Okay. Well, moving forward for the continued public engagement, is there an ask of the steering committee members or of the advisory network members to help with outreach?
Yeah, absolutely. We can do all sorts of different mechanisms to make sure that we are reaching the audiences that we want to reach. I think.
Did you not advertise on Link NYC?
I do not recall if we did.
Come on.
Double check.
That's so easy. It's supposed to be your agency's thing.
Yes, I will double check. But what I will say is that we are more than happy to make sure that we are engaging the groups that people want us to consider. We've already had agency partners who have said, "Oh, what if we work together on something, right? So we can talk to our specific group. If there's something with the council, we'd be happy to do that. We want to make sure we're talking to New Yorkers. That matters."
Thank you. Yeah. I think there's a lot of interest. I mean, I know this summer is the intention to meet again in a year
for
the public engagement. Sorry.
So plans are still underway for the specific and the logistics, but we expect to do more in the new year.
Summers are tough.
They are.
So, but yeah, please let us know. Okay, I want to ask about local law 35.
Sure.
A lot of highlighting on these questions. Okay, so with local law 35, when can we expect the 2024 report?
It's required by law to be published by March 31st of next year.
By the spring, okay.
So yeah, that would be the very latest.
And it's just one report a year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, with updates or?
So each report requires agencies to report any tool that was used within the used at least once within the calendar year of reporting. So any tool that was used even once in 2024 will be reported for that report.
Okay, and they have to share that information even if they use that tool just one time.
Yes.
Okay. And I just want to make sure I have it correctly. The disclosure includes the commercial name, a brief description of the algorithmic tool, the purpose of the tool, and the type of data collected and analyzed by the tool.
Correct.
They're not required to share how long they're in a contract with that tool for.
There isn't an explicit question that asks about contract terms. There is a question around vendor engagement. I think our experience has been that, of course, some agencies do use a vendor, but that form of engagement looks different. In some cases, there's more sort of a consulting. In some other cases, there's a technology purchase. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all to what it means to engage with a vendor or an outside group to support that. So I think the question is reflecting getting at the heart of whether or not there is another party involved versus the specifics of contracting terms.
Okay. And they don't have to specify if there's a subcontractor.
So the language of the law does not require reporting of subcontractors. If an agency is engaging with a vendor and that vendor has a subcontractor, it could be possible that they would report it in that way. But the way that the question is prescribed by the law, they're asked for vendor involvement.
And just to confirm, they're also not required to disclose the amount of the contract or what they're, the amount that they're paying.
Right. There's no
for.
questions in there around contract terms.
Okay. We're in this last report, in this 2023 report, and looking into 2024, have there been any obstacles to ensure compliance of Local Law 35 with agencies?
No, we've had 100% compliance for all 4 years.
Excellent. All reports prior to 2023 listed the number of tools reported and the number of tools identified. Did the methodology of compliance with the law change? And why is there no longer reporting on the number of tools identified?
Sure. That reflects the shift from Executive Order 50, what was formerly Executive Order 50 of 2019, which was when OTI was created through Executive Order 3, those responsibilities for algorithmic management shifted to OTI. And that's also when Local Law 35 took effect. And so the previous reports just reflect the process from previous years. The reports going forward include the process for Local Law 35.
Okay. I wanted to ask about an audit that the state comptroller conducted. As I understand it, it was in some kind of cooperation with OTI.
Yes.
Yeah. The report shows that there are, I think maybe Councilmember Menon referenced this, or no? I think she referenced it. Yeah. The report shows that Teach to 1360, Feedback Studio, Tech, and Teach FX are also used by the DOE. However, they're not reported in either 2022 or 2023 reports. Do you have a sense of why they were excluded?
Yeah, so generally we, from our end, we don't try to diagnose from a distance without knowing exactly what the specific decision-making was for the agency. Agencies are responsible for identifying their tools and reporting them under Local Law 35. We provide guidance to agencies when they have questions about whether or not something meets the threshold for being reported, yes or no. So I don't have the specifics behind the decision-making for DOE there. In general, in order to be reported for Local Law 35, a tool has to meet 3 criteria of the definition. It has to be derived from sophisticated data analytics, including AI. It has to be involved in a decision-making process for the agency, and that decision-making process has to have a material public impact. So we do advise agencies that if a tool does not meet all 3 criteria, it is not obliged to be reported under Local Law 35. Again, I'm not speaking to the specifics of that tool. I don't have the insight into the decision-making there, but we do always advise agencies how to understand the requirements of the law.
Okay. But so in this particular instance, I guess how do you all ensure that what is being disclosed to you agency to agency is all of it?
Mm-hmm. So there's really 2 things to consider. One is that as part of the reporting process, we do ask agencies to certify their compliance. So when they submit their documents and their reporting, we do ask them to say, this is what we have to report. The second component is that throughout the process, over the multi-month period when we do kickoff to agency submissions being due, we provide guidance and technical assistance to agencies. We meet with them and help them understand how to understand the requirements of the law and to answer any questions that we can.
Okay, but there's no mechanism for you all to, I guess, after reporting or, I guess, does every agency have a different deadline for when they have to submit so that you all make that March deadline?
No. Well, all agencies are required to report to us by December 31st of the calendar year. That gives us until March 31st of the following year to collate, review, et cetera.
Okay, but in those 3 months, you're not double checking.
We do often work with agencies to better understand the materials that they've submitted. It's, again, up to the agency to identify the tools that they have to report. That is their obligation under the law, and we do ask them to certify the results to us.
Okay. Okay, well, I will ask the DOE about these particular programs separately. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Okay. Can I ask on Okay, are you familiar, if I utilize another tool referenced in the comptroller's report, it's the Qualified Exterior Wall Inspector by DOB. Are you familiar with that particular tool? It was in the state comptroller's report. It's used to identify facade defects.
I am familiar with the report, but can't speak to the specifics of it.
Okay. Can you share why that one was not included in the report? My understanding is that your office did review and respond to that particular tool, but it was not published in the local law 35 report.
So I can't speak to the specifics for DOB's decision making about excluding or excluding, including or excluding any tool. Again, that's the agency's obligation, is to make that determination. We, in general, will always advise agencies again to take a look at the criteria for local law 35, what needs to be included to meet those 3 criteria, and we provide them with that guidance.
Okay. I guess just because you were in collaboration with the state comptroller on the report, so we pulled these 2 examples from there where they were deemed that they are in fact using AI tools. Just curious, I guess, what is the next steps for you all after this hearing? If I'm saying I would love to understand why it was in the report and not in the comptroller's report and not in OTI's report. Is there something that happens now at OTI to go back to DOB and DOE to dig in a little bit more on whether or not these are actually meeting the criteria? If there was an issue, like what happens now?
Sure. We do sometimes have conversations with agencies where we sort of talk about what tools they may have. Again, provide guidance with them on whether or not something seems to meet the definition of local law 35. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it is always the agencies who are required by law to report the algorithmic tools that they've identified. So that's their responsibility.
Okay. But there's nothing that you all do after that disclosure is made, after they've said we've provided everything. There's nothing else that OTI can do to determine if that is actually 100% accurate.
So, like I said, sometimes we do have backs and forths with agencies to better understand the submissions that they've done. But again, we ask agencies to certify that they're in compliance with the law, and so we accept that certification.
Okay. If I come to you and tell you, I strongly believe you need to kind of re-engage on interaction with the agency because of some of these tools, is that something that you all can do?
We are always happy to provide agencies with guidance on local law 35. We do that before, we do that after. So any opportunity to work with them, we will always take. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they need to be the ones who are identifying the tools that they have that meet that threshold and that need to be reported.
Okay. I mean, DOE I'm less concerned about because they actively submit for local law 35. DOB, as I see from the 2023 report, has 0, and this is something that the state comptroller highlighted is why. I'm probably more concerned about ensuring that they are complying with Local Law 35. So I'm making that request.
Happy to sort of go back to anything that we have and to take any additional conversations from there.
Thank you. Local Law 35 requires listing a list of vendors that developed ADS tools used by city agencies. In the reports, including in the 2022 report, a vendor in at least one or two occasion is identified as NA. Is that no answer?
So NA could either mean that there was no response to that question, right, or that it was not applicable. That's an example of where we're trying to include better standardization of response types so that we can make sure that there's no ambiguity about that. But as I mentioned earlier, there are instances where agencies may not be legally able to disclose a piece of information. I'm not saying it's just the vendor one. It could be a different piece of information about a tool that's governed by a different framework that governs the disclosure of that information, and Local Law 35 does not ask agencies to violate any other legal obligations that they may have.
Okay, I can understand that. Are there instances where if it's created in-house that would read as NA, or is it specifically
right, that
just
would be possible. So again, we're building out, I think you would call it more of like a style guide to make sure that there's no ambiguity in that reporting. In previous years, it could have meant that there was either no vendor or maybe they didn't have information.
I think the reporting for DOI, if I'm not mistaken, where it said NA, I think it had that caveat, but I think in other instances,
we're happy to take a look
it
to make
just
sure
read NA.
Yeah, that the information that's being reported is of as much value as it can be.
Thank you. And my next question is related to PD reporting. According to reports, PD has been using facial recognition since 2011. The report indicates that PD uses DataWorks as a vendor for their facial recognition tool. However, there are many materials that show that NYPD also used open AI tools as well. Can you share why the report only identifies DataWorks?
I don't have any insight into the particulars of the tool or its vendors.
This is my second request.
Happy to.
Please. It's just pretty public is all. And so that's why I was very curious about kind of what mechanisms you all have. I know it's not quality assurance, but it's like that level of like, we need to make sure that what we're publishing on our letterhead is 100% accurate. And them using open AI tools is very public. I wanted to ask about another NYPD reporting of ShotSpotter. I don't know if you're familiar.
I'm familiar
with it. And so it's a tool that they use to capture audio to identify gunshots. And there are many reports, including that of New York City Comptroller, indicating that the tool is not working properly. And nevertheless, PD is up to renew their contract, I think next month, or this month? I think it's next month, with Sound Thinking, who's the name of the vendor. Curious if you all, I guess when a particular tool has kind of this level of public attention about its efficacy, PD very recently put out a statement about, they share the numbers of like whether or not this is actually doing its job. If you all examine that tool, like does OTI play a role in saying like, you've submitted your data for the report for Local Law 35, we would love for you to like look at your contract. I guess like what does OTI play a role, or is it just give me the information and we'll publish it? Kind of where is the communication? I mean, this is a tech, it's with PD, but it is a tech related contract. So what role does OTI play upon like learning of that information and the agency's future with that particular vendor, with that tool?
Sure, that's a great question. I would say from the perspective of Local Law 35, Local Law 35's goal at the end of the day is transparency and essentially a sort of inventorying of how these tools are in use in city government. And so what we do with that information is make that publicly available. We recently started publishing this on open data, so that's even more available. But it is there to sort of represent what currently exists and what was used within that calendar year. I don't have calendar year. I don't have the specifics on the two tools that you mentioned, but we'll say that in general, we're available to support agencies in a number of different ways. Again, sometimes that takes the form more of advisory work. In other cases, that's a little bit more prescriptive if it comes to things like some of the cybersecurity reviews, et cetera. But in general, we want to be able to be supportive of agencies where they need our assistance.
Okay, thank you. I may have some more just related to that down the line. Okay, and then on. So this is Councilmember Powers' bill. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. No, I apologize. Sorry. I just wanted to ask on Intro 199. Can you share how many employees from your office are working on Local Law 35 on the report?
Sure. So we actually have a dedicated staff member whose focus is Local Law 35, our algorithms reporting
Who's
manager.
this brave soul?
Renata Garrica, sitting here in the front row.
Thank you for your service.
And then in addition, myself and Jihao Chen, who's our director of AI and machine learning, oversee all of our AI work.
Okay. And can you share how many of your the OTI staff is working on AI principles and action plan?
That's the same set of individuals. We
Oh.
do bring in additional expertise from within the agency to support in specific ways.
Okay. Okay. And then I know Councilmember Holden had raised questions about just filing a complaint about ADS or AI use. Do you all have a mechanism to share with the public about how, if a decision was made with AI or ADS, is there a mechanism to inform the public of that a decision was made using these tools for a decision-making process?
Yeah, so
I feel like some are more explicit, some are more public than others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's two levels to think about that. At the higher level, aggregate level look, right? So that an individual.
Yes, but we have to wait till the spring.
Yes, it does take a while to put together the report for agencies to.
I guess like in real time.
So then on the more individual level, again, that's going to be something that is also tied into what existing agency policies or processes are there. So some of these tools are used and have been used for a long time and may be built into existing agency business processes. And so there isn't a unified portal for these things because that may not be the right tack to be able to enable New Yorkers to better engage with their outcomes.
Is there, and I'm sorry if I missed this in the action plan, but is there something covered in the action plan where, as part of guidance, agencies are required, encouraged, but to notify New Yorkers, specifically public facing? I know that there are there's some decision making based on the reports that is not necessarily public facing or creating decisions or matching right away, but is there something in the action plan already that exists in those instances where a New Yorker can understand what I submitted and the decision that I have now in my email is based off of a tool, is based off of ADS? Right.
So there's definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach to what we would recommend for that. I think what we've done is built that idea of transparency, notification, that's built into our principles document under the transparency section, so giving agencies an idea of what it means to be transparent about those tools. Also part of our generative AI preliminary use guidance, where we also talk about notification, public notice, et cetera. So it's less around building a singular process and more about making sure that we are instilling the values of transparency and accountability within city use citywide.
But and I understand that. I totally understand that. I think the DOE is one of those examples where the high school process, right? You understand. I think most New Yorkers understand that there is a process. There is, this specific lottery system. I forget the name of the process, the selection process. But there's YouTube videos on it. Like, we understand if you're a high school student and you're trying to get into one of these select high schools that this is the exact decision-making process that was utilized. But then I think there are other instances, again, reflected in the report, where agencies like PD, for example, are utilizing a tool as to prevent crime or detect crime. And I think those are instances where if you are on some kind of a database, I believe that you should be informed, right? Like, here's an example of DOE, you're applying, so I'm aware that there's a process. I am voluntarily giving you that information to be a part of this bigger process, the decision-making process. But with PD, it sounds like, or it is the fact that you're not volunteering information, photographs maybe being used of you with or without your cognizance for the purpose of like crime prevention. And so I get it's not one size fits all, but I think that there should be an effort to say, if you are a New Yorker and your face, your image, your name, your likeness, your personal information is being utilized for a tool that we're reporting on, that you know that. That is my belief. And what I'm asking is if that is something that you all are looking at in the action plan with some of these agencies that I think are not as, who do not necessarily share those principles.
Yeah, I think that does get down to what I said, what we've built out so far, thinking about that, embedding that in the principles to make it clear that these sorts of activities, where they're possible and in the right format, can go a long way to engendering trust that residents have with city agencies using AI. Like you said, it isn't going to be one size fits all, because it has to be dynamically responsive to the individual technology, what it's being used for, whether or not it can even provide that sort of like individual level notification. So it's going to be a complicated picture, but our goal with the principles is to make sure that agencies are understanding the value of transparency, and over time to help them come up with ways of doing that are responsive to both the demand and the need, as well as the structural limitations that they may have.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all wrapped up. Thank you so much. I'm all wrapped up for questions. Let me just make sure I read this correctly. Okay. I now open the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a formal government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recordings as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant at Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card with the Sergeant at Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 3 minutes to speak on today's hearing topics on the use of ADS and AI by New York City agencies, intros 199, 926, 1024, and 1099. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony you wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant at Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recordings will not be accepted. Now I would like to welcome our first panel. We have Darío Maestro from STOP and Brian Lozano of Tech NYC. You can start when you're ready, and whoever can start.
Great, I'll go first. All right. Good afternoon, Chair Gutierrez. I'm Brian Lozano, the director of the Tech NYC Foundation. We recently launched a project called Decoded Futures, which helps nonprofits to adopt AI technologies to better serve their communities. We provide AI training sessions, hands-on learning, and office hours to help nonprofits develop AI literacy and integrate AI solutions into their operations. AI is being invested in unprecedented levels by both startups and Fortune 500 companies in New York. We encourage city agencies looking for new technology solutions to partner with companies developing AI tools and support a local tech workforce. New York City's regulations on AI began with Local Law 49 of 2018, which established a task force to make recommendations on automated decision-making systems. The task force informed protocols that were incorporated in Local Law 35 in 2022, which requires the mayor's office to report on algorithmic tools used by the city. As reviewed by this task force and written into law, the definition of algorithmic or automation decision-making tools is crucial in ensuring that unsophisticated tools that do not result in decision-making are left out of these regulations. Training city employees on using AI and the transparency of AI tools is crucial to their success. New York City released its AI Action Plan in 2023, which resulted in the city's guidance on AI usage and principles for responsible use of AI. This guidance should be regularly updated as the city learns from its use of AI and as the technology progresses. We also do not recommend banning any specific AI use cases. We recommend instead that the city regulates and monitor AI based on its risk level. It is important for New York City residents to have insight as to when AI tools are being used by agencies, and for that reason, Tech NYC supports Introduction 1024. At the same time, we do not recommend over-regulating the city's use of AI tools to the point at which companies providing the technology will no longer want to work with the city. Thank you for your consideration.
Good afternoon, Chair Gutierrez and members of the Committee on Technology. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today on this critical legislative package. My name is Dario Maestro. I am the Senior Legal Fellow at the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project, or STOP. We are a New York-based civil rights group committed to fighting privacy violations and the discrimination biases sometimes embedded in new technologies, especially in artificial intelligence and automated decision systems. In our work, we have witnessed firsthand how these technologies can harm already marginalized communities by reinforcing existing patterns of discrimination, whether by race, gender, or socioeconomic status. That is why we welcome the introduction of a trio of the bills included in today's agenda, specifically Intros 199, 926, and 1024. These bills represent a much-needed legislative push towards oversight and accountability in the city's use of AI, as it has been already much discussed during today's hearing. However, despite their strong foundation, they would benefit from targeted amendments to become genuinely effective. Today, I am going to discuss each bill, offering a specific recommendation on each one. First, Intro 926 calls for defining best practices in the failing to specify what standards and minimum standards for what these tools should meet, or what AI audits and regularized reviews should be testing for. Without standardized audit criteria, we cannot determine how and to what extent these systems perpetuate bias. At STOP, we have conducted extensive research on AI audits and would be happy to collaborate with the Council and your offices to help develop these necessary rules. Further, until these standards are met and set by either legislation or city agencies, we recommend establishing a temporary moratorium on AI use in sensitive areas like housing, employment, law enforcement, and social services. Now, turning to Intro 199, this bill seeks to establish an Office of Algorithmic Data Integrity. But as it stands, it only gives this office an advisory role. We believe real enforcement authority should also be needed for this office to be effective. Specifically, it should have the ability to investigate, penalize, and enforce corrective measures to act both against a tool that is found to be biased or harmful, or when agencies fail to comply. The ability to subpoena code and the ability to test that code for biases would also be welcomed. Finally, Intro 1024 mandates a centralized list of AI tools approved for city use. This adds transparency. Thank you, I appreciate that. This adds transparency, as I was saying, but without a clear public approval process to ensure that only the safe and biased tools make it onto that list, we would have a situation where the mayoral administration could simply rubber stamp any tool it desires and make into a list. Just to wrap up, we believe that if properly amended and when it combined, this package of legislation could form a powerful and meaningful tool in combating AI biases. Intro 926 can set the rigorous standards that city agencies can follow in their AI use. 1024 would then function as a guardian, only allowing those tools that meet these standards to be used, and 199 would create the enforcement body that would make sure the AI systems comply with the standards of 926 and the approval process of 1024. We at STOP are ready to work with your offices and the council to develop these important amendments and secure the strongest possible safeguards for all New Yorkers.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. Brian, thank you for testifying. Just a question over what kind of tools or what kind of reporting do you think certain tech companies, like, where is it exhaustive? I know you kind of concluded, like, where too much regulation, right, would discourage. And I think that certainly, like, the spirit of so many of these bills is more on government transparency and in just openness. And so just curious, kind of, what can you share on what are some of these tech companies' thresholds? I mean, it's very public. If they become a vendor with the city, we've got local law 35. I'm here asking for more information. I want to understand the value of these contracts. I want these tools to be assessed. And so where do you believe the threshold is for some of these tech companies? Is it on reporting, or where is it specifically?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember. I think we don't have a formal framework that I can really give you immediately, but I think this is something that we can probably get back with our members and get some feedback on and get back to you. I know that with local law 35, I think one of our biggest things is, not over-regulating, and I think we can probably provide you with a little bit more definition around that, but currently I don't have it right off, but I can work with our team and
is there, thank you, and I look forward to that, but is there a sentiment that local law 35 is doing some sort of over-regulating?
No.
Oh.
Sorry, I didn't mean that. It was more of a...
It's very minimal reporting.
No, I was going to really just say that I think with local law 35, there are principles and frameworks that are already been created by the city, and I think for us, it's just making sure that moving forward, anything doesn't really over-regulate beyond, like, from there. That makes sense.
And I think there's and thank you. I think there's also a benefit to demanding more, requiring more information. There's an obvious benefit to me in having an agency like OTI serve as the agency that's assessing the use of these tools, that their role be more than just retrieving and printing. And I think we cannot feel safe in assuming that every agency will do that on their own accord, or that they will read the action plan, follow the guidance, and do that on their own accord. I really do think that there needs to be an enforcement mechanism, which, as we heard today, doesn't exist, is likely not in the plans under this administration. So, but there's a benefit, especially in this climate, when you're ensuring to New Yorkers that we're keeping up with the Joneses here. We just want agencies to do it responsibly, and we're going to communicate to every New Yorker how we're doing that and the benefit that they're getting, if any, or the impact.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you.
So we need tech companies to be down.
I'll get back to you in terms of what our members say and give you a little more
Thank
detail
you.
on that.
Give my best to everyone at Tech
Absolutely.
NYC. Thank you.
Will do.
Dario, I have a question for you. Thank you so much for your testimony, and I know you didn't get to read it
Thank you.
word for word, but I have it here. And we'll certainly be engaging with you, with STOP, on some of these recommendations. I agree with you on the recommendation for the Office of Algorithmic Data serving more than just an advisory role. I don't know. You were here the whole time. I don't know what you gather from testimony from OTI of kind of like where they feel their role is what was said today versus like what I read in Executive Order 3. So just curious kind of where you think or what that pathway looks like, because we do need something with way more teeth. The Office of Data in other cities and other states have more of a role. And so just curious kind of what you think with this versus their action plan.
Thank you for that question, and that's very pertinent to the testimony that we heard earlier from OTI. In fact, one of our concerns about 926 was that the bill relies too much on OTI, given the somewhat erratic record that the office has implementing local laws and regulations, specifically on AI systems, as we have heard today. So we generally support the creation of the Office of Algorithmic Data Integrity. We recognize that there might be an overlap of functions that they might need to be sorted out between the offices, and that establishing a new office within the New York City government might take time. However, we think it's a great opportunity to rethink what enforcement looks in regulating these new technologies, and that's why the introduction of this bill and perhaps a targeted amendment that would give it the enforcement teeth that we were talking about earlier, with the ability to examine the code and take corrective action against tools that have been developed by vendors and are not driving the desired results in the use by city agencies, or are, like we heard earlier, there was a tool that was implemented and was giving false information, completely invented, information to the residents of New York. What we want to avoid is that, and this office would be the perfect opportunity to start giving the New York City government the tools it needs to check with the vendors and make sure that we're delivering the results that we need.
Thank you both so much for your testimony and for sticking it out. I'll call the next panel up. We have Christopher Leon Johnson and Liliana De Luca. Sure.
No problem.
Your other panelist, Liliana, is here.
Take your time. Take your time.
Okay.
Take your time. Take your time, please. Take your time. Take your time. Let me just go through.
Just have a seat. Have a seat right over there. Thank you.
Ready?
Yeah.
Hey, hello, good afternoon. My name is Christopher Leon Johnson. And by the way, Jennifer, congratulations on your pregnancy. Congratulations. I mean, Paternal Health Month, right? We're still in it? I think so, right? But congratulations on your pregnancy, by the way. All right, so I'm going to speak on behalf of artificial intelligence inside city agencies. I'm really, it's okay. Look, I know this is going to go through with all these bills, but we need to do more testing about artificial technology, because look, AI is flawed. If you ever use Grok, anybody on Twitter or X use Grok, there's a lot of discrepancies with Grok. There's a lot of discrepancies with Meta AI. If you ever use Meta AI, there's a lot of discrepancies. And I mean, we need to do more tests about this. Do more tests, guys. We need more tests about AI and city agencies, because this could help people, but at the same time, it could hurt a lot of people too if you don't use it correctly. Because remember, we're all human beings here, and we can never let technology decide our lives and decide who gets what and who doesn't get what, because it could always mess up. And I think very soon that it's gonna bite everybody in the butt, and we're gonna be in lawsuits. The city's gonna be in big lawsuits because of artificial intelligence. Like I said, we need to do more tests about this before we implement this stuff. The public input is really needed. We need more public input in all 5 boroughs, especially the inner districts, because they need to be more educated about artificial intelligence, because they don't know. I mean, I know all the rich communities know about AI, but the the impoverished communities don't know about artificial intelligence and like automated systems and Chat GPT and Chatbot and Meta AI and what is it, Grok. If you want Twitter X, pay $80 a month. You can go on get Grok. Okay, they don't know anything about this. And what's going on is if you try to apply for a job, they use this stuff to know about people instead of Google search. So and one more thing is, look, we have to start pushing for more AI candidates for office. We need to have I know it's kind of dystopian, but we need to add 2 positions in the city council for artificial intelligence candidates. We need AI elected officials too. We need AI elected officials like to represent people, represent the whole city. That's what I gotta say. And yeah, that's what I gotta say. By the way, about the end of here, and congratulations on your pregnancy. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
just want to say that some of these bills aim to create more transparency and more reporting, and OTI was in opposition to all the bills today.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, no problem. Yeah, I understand, but we need more transparency. But
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed. That's the purpose of the bills. Thank
yeah, I gotta go to the labor hearing.
Dude,
All right.
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then I have Mr. Luca, right? Liliana? Yes. You can. If you could just turn the mic on if the light is red, it's on.
Here? Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm a member of a group of victims of high-level technology in New York City, New York State, and New Jersey. These technologies have caused in many of us to be diagnosed with brain lesions as the Havana syndrome brain lesions against the neurological system and the brain. And we're getting together to inform the state of New York and the city of New York about these events that are very tragic. We have victims groups throughout the United States of these technologies. And there are about 400,000 victims of brain lesions from these technologies in the United States. In the states of California, for instance, they passed the neural rights laws to protect the neurological system and brain of people, and the state of Colorado as well. And questionnaires in our victims groups throughout the years have shown that the guinea pigs used for these experiments are women over 60 and 70 years old who live alone as widowed, separated, divorced, or single. And they're using us for experimentation with the brain and neurological system by sending these harmful technologies on around the clock to our bodies and brains. And among the people experimenting with these technologies are military organizations and also law enforcement. And the United Nations, where I worked for 25 years, has protected the victims with the reports of cyber torture that are committed against victims with technology. And recently, the Special Rapporteur on Torture last year of the United Nations issued an annual report to the General Assembly about the production, trade, and use of weapons by law enforcement to torture people. Mm. So the UN is very well aware of that. And I have been slandered by my persecutors who are covering up these crimes against humanity with a fabrication that they created about my employment in the United Nations that ended properly in 2007. This is 16 years ago.
Ms.
So that
Luke, I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you have any position on any of the legislation that we heard today?
yes, that I support what Member Palladino said. I support what Dario said.
Okay.
I think
Thank you.
that this is very harmful because people are getting brain lesions.
Thank you.
And we have a package of information to bring to the council members. We would like to get your mailing address, phone, and email
we can
address.
share it with you. We can share it with you. I shared it at the beginning of the hearing. It can be shared to testimony@council.nyc.gov. We can write it down for you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Because
I have to move on to the
because
next
we
panel,
have,
Mr. Luke. I'm so
I'll
sorry.
finish. We have a letter to all the authorities that want to know
Mm-hmm.
about the consequences of these experiments, human trafficking people, especially older women. We have a press release,
Okay.
and we have links
send it over.
supporting from the government, information from the government about this.
You got it. Okay. Thank you. We'll give you we'll write it for you so you can email it. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
testifying, Mr. Luke. Oh,
Thank
he's got it for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I want to turn to our witnesses joining us via Zoom. The next panel we have is Daniel Schwartz and Theo Chino. And if we could start with Daniel, if they're here.
You may begin.
If not, let me see. Daniel?
Laptop.
Hi.
We see you. You may begin.
I'm sorry, my laptop just acted up. Thank you very much. My name is Daniel Schwartz and I'm testifying on behalf of the New York Civil Liberties Union. The legislative items in front of the committee, intros 199, 926, 1024, and 1099, laudably attempt to tackle the issues and harms arising from government use of AI. Unfortunately, these bills would not create the necessary protections and fail to deliver on their stated goals. They risk entrenching ineffective regulation by lacking clear requirements and sufficient coverage. The NYCLU therefore opposes intros 199, 926, and 1024 in their current form, and we offer detailed recommendations in our written testimony and would be happy to work with the officers involved in the legislation. The New York City Council must act to provide transparency and accountability to ADS and ensure they do not digitally circumvent New York laws against discrimination. Any regulation must cover ADS broadly, mandate comprehensive and impartial impact assessments that assess the validity of the tools, their potential for disparate impact on any protected class, their impact on accessibility for people with disabilities, and potential remedies to address those impacts. It must require transparency and clear notice to affected people, provide opportunities to contest the result of such tools as well as viable paths to request reasonable accommodations, and mandate clear prohibitions of tools that violate laws, threaten welfare, or have discriminatory impact. New Yorkers should be fully informed about when and how algorithms are making decisions impacting their lives. They should be able to trust these systems are accurate, and they should have proof that their demographics don't lead to disparate outcomes. To achieve these goals, we provide the Digital Fairness Act, the Boswell Oppressive Technology Act, and the New York Department of Financial Services AI Circular Letter as exemplary frameworks for consideration by the Council as it engages further on issues related to AI and ADS. The NYCLU thanks the committee for the opportunity to provide testimony and for recognizing the need for oversight for the use of AI and ADS by government agencies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. Theo Chino?
Begin.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Victoria, for including me in this late hour. My name is Theo Chino, and I serve as the first secretary of the Social Democrat of America, also known internationally as the Committee of the Second Socialist International. We are the socialist faction within the Democratic Party. The automated decision system and artificial intelligence law need to include the Commission on Public Information and Communication, which is led by the Office of the Public Advocate. The Commission on Public Information and Communication has not met in 3,141 days, which is approximately 8 years. I am testifying today to emphasize that automation decisions system and artificial intelligence rule must always include oversight by a human with an adequately high threshold of intelligence quotient. The oversight of artificial intelligence will inevitably become a repetitive task. Model language can be dangerous if not developed with comprehensive community input. We hope the law will mandate that city agencies disclose the specific model language they use. And if a model language can be disclosed by the vendor, their tool should not be used in New York City. As mentioned by Councilman Gutierrez earlier, the law needs to include hard retention deadline, citizen notification of being in the database, and other actions that put the citizen at the center of the discussion. We believe that the Public Advocate Commission on Public Information and Communication is a very good elected body, if only it would meet. Outreach for public engagement, particularly to community board, has been lacking. For example, there is a long-standing hacker group called 2600 that has been meeting since 1980 at the Citigroup Center on every first Friday of each month. The government of Germany include their local computer hacker group in decision making. Why is New York City not engaging with this type of activists? In terms of politics, SDA meets once a month in a local atrium, and our event can be found on socialist.us/event. Anyone is welcome to join. The Social Democrat of America has launched the Rev My Blog program to educate citizens about partisan politics, where we can discuss and brainstorm on this idea with the local community. So anyway, to educate, we sponsor the documentary County on which is available on PBS. I am available to answer any question you have. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you both. Can I just ask if your testimonies were submitted online? I know both Daniel and Theo had some recommendations. We just want to make sure we capture it.
Yes, I have done it online. I have submitted online.
Excellent.
And we will, once we meet with our group, we'll submit more details on each of the different introduction. But
Okay.
we haven't yet met since we read them.
Okay, excellent. And then Daniel, I know you had some recommendations as well. Did you submit it yet, or can you within the next couple days?
Yes, I will do so. We'll probably submit and send your team an email with the attached written testimony. Thank you.
Excellent. Looking forward to both, and thank you so much for sticking around and testifying. That concludes our final panel. If we have inadvertently missed anyone who has registered to testify today and has yet to be called, please use the Zoom hand function or raise your hand here, and you'll be called in the order that your hand was raised. Well, thank you once again, everyone, for your testimony today. The hearing is now adjourned. How exciting. You know how much reading I did for them to not answer any questions? I read through that whole friggin' report. And he's like...